Oh, hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Swordly Cone. I was just practicing some of my sword play. Unfortunately, GB1 doesn't let me play in the control room with sharp things anymore, ever since getting stuck in ancient Egypt. I mean, it was only for a month, but I mean, still. In this episode, we're going to be checking out the Metal-Earth Japanese Toyotomi Armor. And this build's actually one of the older builds from Metal-Earth, involving two different kinds of metal. One being the traditional kind of steel, colored in black, and the other one being a little bit of brass. Now, the brass one tends to be a little softer, and when we're combining these two parts, there tends to be some issues. Now, what kind of issues are we going to run into? How hard is it to build one of these armor pieces? And at the end of the day, what are the tricky bits? Well, Groovers, let's get down to the workbench and take a look at the package.
And there we have it. Both pages needed to build the Japanese armor. If your package looks like mine, your instructions will be white. But if your instructions are yellow, don't worry. Everything is exactly the same. Looking at these instructions, it seems like we have some interesting shapes to bend and form here. The first thing we're going to look at is how to make our helmet and get our mask together. Next, we'll talk about shaping the shoulders and arms and how to connect part 15 and 16 together and get a nice connection. And finally, we'll talk about attaching all the detailed parts to part 36 and how to connect our armor suit together. This little suit looks a little trickier than I was first expecting, and I can see a couple of new builders in the audience too. Let's go over some of the basics quickly. These metal models require us to cut out our pieces, then shape them using whatever we can. Once our parts are correctly shaped, we can connect them together by bending or twisting our tabs. The way we bend or twist our tabs is indicated in the instructions by these circles and triangles. Personally, I try to follow the instructions the first time when it comes to bending our tabs if I can. Then, when the build is complete, I'll go over everything again and change anything that might stand out. I like to make my tabs as invisible as possible. That's how you get that museum quality you hear so much about.
You know, I think I could redeem myself a little bit, especially showing my skill with this tool. If only I could maybe chop this banana in equal parts. Let me see here. Okay, I'm not really great at picking up tools for things such as this, but luckily I do have a tool expert who is, and he might know what tools we'll need to build this Japanese armor set. Timothy?
The samurai are the only slightly tolerable human culture on Earth. Their armor looks almost as good as mine, but that's about all it's good for. Looks. To build this Japanese armor, you will need nippers, tweezers, doming tools, and tapping punches. That sword isn't sharp. You're just playing with a butter knife.
What do you mean this sword is as dull as a butter knife? GB1 must have done this. Can't trust that thing around anybody. This is no better than just a prop now. As always, these are just our suggestions when it comes to tools, and you really don't need anything but nippers and tweezers to get the job done. But of course, having the right tools will make everything a lot easier. Now we've looked at our instructions and we have all of our tools. There's only one thing left to do, and that's for you to press that like and subscribe button. We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers here on the show and really could use your help. Oh, I meant right now. Don't worry. Just press it. Just right there. Don't worry. It only takes a second. Oh, thank you very much. Right on. Now, let's get to the build.
The Metal-Earth Japanese Armor Kit is a build that has a lot of twists and turns, surprising for its small stature. If you're looking to build this model, pay very close attention, young grasshopper, and grab those tweezers. The first thing we need to talk about is forming the iconic helmet and mask area. Starting with part 1, we need to get that dome shape and also slightly curve our wings. The best way I found to do this was to start by taking our forming tool and pushing it directly into our part, being careful not to press too hard, but make sure to apply pressure evenly to get a good shaping. Once the center halves have met, we're good to start shaping our sides. Because our middle is already shaped, all we have to do is slightly bend each wing. You can use your helmet here as a guide to figure out how much of a bend you need, but pre-bending will always help here. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Now, let's shape part 2. This part is a little easier to form than you might think, but we can give it some more definition for a nice pop. Just like before, slightly bend the metal using the shaping tool. Make sure to form the parts using the engraved side on the outside. Once we have a nice look, we can put our parts together using part number 6. As we go to place our tabs into their insertion holes, you might encounter a few difficulties because of how our parts were shaped. I always recommend matching up our parts several times before actually connecting them together. This is a great way for making any little corrections that you might need to make before securing the parts together. Pre-bending our tabs a little bit is a great way for getting all the little bits of small detail like our nose, our mustache, and bows into place. But also pre-bending our tabs for some of our bigger pieces can make our connections a lot easier too. Finally, when it comes to securing our tabs, make sure to bend them out of the way of other insertion holes. Nothing is worse than accidentally blocking yourself down the road and having to go back and take everything apart just to get access to that one insertion hole. Don't block yourself. Actually, speaking of blocking yourself, the second thing we're going to touch on is our arms. These pieces need to be formed into cylinders and then attached together. That might sound easy, but it can be a little tricky too. Just like before, we want to take our parts and press them into our tools. However, I recommend starting with a bigger tool first and working your way down to the right size. This will allow for us to get the right shape without any kind of hot spots, which can be a lot easier to form, especially with engraved details like we have here on our armor. Once we have our parts correctly shaped, it's now time for the tricky bit. We have to connect 13, 14, and 15 together. Depending on how well you shape these parts, getting the tabs into the right area and securing them tightly can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Go slow here and secure one side at a time, working your way around like a clock. You might need to get into the assembly and push from the inside to get enough of the tab out to secure the tabs correctly. This is very true for part 15 and 16. Before we close up part 15, we need to push the tabs out on the shoulder and make sure we have as much of the tab out as possible. Getting part 16 to connect to part 15 is hard because it seems like the tabs are almost just too short. By applying some of the back pressure on part 15 and applying equal pressure on part 16, this will allow for you to get the best connection here possible and hopefully holding those shoulder plates in place. Now, if you've mastered our shoulder detail, there's something more we need to talk about. And for that, we need our third point. For our third and final point, we're going to be looking at attaching all the detail onto part 36 and how to connect our whole suit together. The details that go onto part 36 are pretty straightforward to make. We just need to pre-bend our tabs, insert them into the insertion holes, and then secure them flatly. We repeat this until we have all of our panels complete. When it comes to attaching our detail panels, our instructions tell us that we want to bend our tabs. This is a massive pain in the butt if you choose to follow the instructions here. My recommendations: don't bend the tabs. Save yourself a time and just give them a quick little twist. This will secure them tightly and also make sure that they don't fall out when you go to form them, and also attach them onto our armor suit. And speaking of attaching our armor suit together, the tabs again here seem to be hard to grab at times with this model. Normally, this is because some of our parts are slightly misshapen. One thing I found consistent throughout this model was that the tabs almost seemed just a little bit too small for what we were trying to secure. Because of this, I can't say this enough: double check your work as much as possible before putting them together. If we need to make small adjustments to our pieces to get the tabs in their place, that's okay. We can go over the model at the end and fix anything that might stand out. Just be careful not to scratch the black paint. That's a lot easier than you might think. Oh wow, look at our model. This thing looks fantastic.
And there we have it, the Metal Earth Toyotomi Hideyoshi Armor. This build was a lot of fun, and I'm actually really happy that everyone out there selected to get this build done. It's been one that I've been wanting to do for a little while, and even before I built this channel, I wanted to build this. I just didn't have the chance or opportunity to grab it and, well, do it. Now, can I recommend this build for new people out there? Yes and no. If you're into collecting Metal Earth models and you want to get all those belts, this is definitely one you need to get. There is some difficulty here, but also being the history behind it, again, being a collector, you want to pick this one up because of where it stands in the collection of Metal Earth models. But if you're just picking up a few models and you're not really sure which ones to get, I might pass on this one and select some of the other ones that have recently come out that have more detail and might be easier to put together. Overall, this is still a fantastic kit, and it will look really good in our armor collection. Alright, Groovers, that brings us to the end of our show. I had a really good time building the armor set with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we have all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Want to pick up your own Japanese armor set? Well, check out groupbuilders.ca. We have all kinds of really cool builds on there at great prices with fast shipping to the United States and Canada. Alright, now, it's time to go put this inside of the armor vault. I just wish it was a little bit bigger. I don't think GB1 is going to allow me to make this one any bigger, because, well, you know, I don't like sharp things. Until the next time, Groovers, keep building.